Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, crazy babies, to another episode of Jam Sessions with your host, yours truly, Joe Mycutt. I have a really great author on today. I hope you enjoy the interview, and be sure to stay tuned after the interview for a few great book recommendations. Without further ado, I'm going to scooch along off stage and bring on our next author. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Jam Sessions with your host, yours truly, Joe Mycutt. I'm here today with the author of the novel Closure, J.L. Avant. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I've just been kicking this cold and keeping on trucking. I appreciate you coming on today so that we can get to know a little bit about you and your novel Closure. So, first question I want to ask you, tell us about Closure. What is this novel about? What is it in essence?
So Closure is it's what I like to call a Southern tragedy. The title is my own play on the word closure, because closure is something final. It's something that is meaningful because it makes sense. You would know this as a children's author, right? As kids, we read stories that have a beginning, a middle, and a satisfying conclusion. And that's also one reason I think that we binge watch true crime dramas as adults, because there are, scenarios that happen, and then there's a way to solve them. And then finally, there's a sense of satisfaction when the killer goes to jail, when the family finds a way to move on. And, it's sensible, it's final, it makes sense. And in reality, closure is something that doesn't come naturally. And my narrator, Roy England, he goes to extremes to try to make that happen for his life. He wants to make something meaningful and satisfying out of his circumstances.
Very, very cool explanation. I love that you expanded on that idea of closure being something that we don't always necessarily get in life. And you're right. We do look for those finite, epic moments, those climactic moments where we can feel some sense of resolution to what we've been involved in. So I do love that. Now, you mentioned the character Roy England. Who inspired this guy? What's he about? Who inspired that character, or what?
Well, it was my own desire for closure that inspired the character. I'm going to get a little candid here, but years ago, I got to know somebody, and I came to be in a relationship with them. And then eventually I had to back out of that relationship because it became too much for me. But I couldn't get what happened between us out of my head. I wanted Roy's story to be my own way of finding closure.
Yes, I was waiting for it. I was like, yes, closure.
Oh God. But yeah, I wanted that. I wanted his story to be my way of having something final with what happened at that point in my life.
That's cool. And it's not only that you use this creative process to find that closure or to create that sense of closure, but you literally took power over the situation. You didn't let closure decide what it would be for you. You transmuted that. You said, my closure on this matter is going to be a creative process where I create an entire story surrounding Roy England. And then you took that creative outlet and you actually manifested a result, a published book, a novel called Closure. And I love that. You were there. You were like, I could tell you were like, I'm going to say it. But yeah.
I hate that I did.
I know, but I just love that you did. But that's perfect, because that's really what creativity is about. That's the importance of art. And I think that is a wonderful reason to write a book. And it's usually books like that are written for those reasons that resonate with people, which makes it all the more reason why people should go out and grab a copy. This book, by the way, while I'm thinking of it, it is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and then you self-published it through Lulu.com as well, right? Okay,
Yes.
great. So that is where people can go to get this book. What would you say, as the author, was maybe the most difficult part of the writing process for you?
So for me, the most difficult thing was looking back on that time in my life and remembering a lot of things that were said and done during that time. Um, you interviewed Eloqua Isom last week, and
Hmm.
she said something that resonated with me. She said, in order to have a breakthrough, you first need to break through. And that resonated with me because truer words have never been said about the writing process. And personally, it's when things were said during this time in my life about me, about this other person, about the two of us, about even things we said to each other. It was going back and performing what was for me kind of like a weird mental surgery of sorts. It was frustrating to remember a lot of what happened,
Hmm.
um, but I was able to pull that part of myself and that part of my life away and literally have a story to tell, and I told it. So
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, because I think what you're describing there and what so many people don't realize, the body and spirit, the mind, they don't know the difference between actually going through the experience and thinking about the experience. Our words have power when we speak to ourselves, damaging. Our body and our mind doesn't know the difference between joking or whatever the case may be. And so retelling the story, revisiting the story, is very much like going through that experience again. But it's very powerful that you're able to, like you said, separate yourself from having going through the experience again, and more so this time around, see it from almost an outside perspective. I think that's what's called being in the seat of control over your emotions.
yeah,
And when you do that, it's a very powerful thing for you to be able to go through that cycle again, but from a totally different, much more powerful and in control angle and perspective. And look what you created. So I think that's really, really cool. Now, what would be your favorite part of the book? Is there a favorite scene or favorite part of the story without giving anything away?
um, I can't say I have a favorite part just because the novel reaches a dark place. And ultimately, I hope that my readers can relate to my narrator, but I also hope that they don't want to because he goes to extremes to satisfy circumstances in his life. Um, so there's a scene where Roy describes his mindset after going to the extreme of kidnapping. His actions, they make sense to him. And as a character, he goes through this in an attempt to satisfy a certain part of his life that he feels needs to be met.
Wow, that's pretty deep. Yeah, this sounds like it's going to have some powerful stuff in it. It brings to mind one of my favorite books and movies, The Girl Interrupted, which I've mentioned before.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
it mentions, I like whenever we're able to be real with ourselves
mhm.
and not glorify those types of things or behaviors, but to identify that it's human nature to have these thoughts, to have these, um, almost seems like urges sometimes, um, but to process them the way that you've processed them and allow your viewers to look into the mind of a character who does the unthinkable and then watch them process it and watch how that works. I think it's important to observe things like that, for scientific reasons, for mental health reasons. A lot of people want to stray away from that or be triggered by it. And yes, those things are triggering, but it's like facing them. It's putting them under a microscope and talking about them through a creative way, through the character in a book.
No,
So
absolutely. And one of the ways that I've experienced, you know, the urge, if you will, to have emotions like anger or depression or sadness or grief. Really what it is, it's the idea, it's the human condition, it's the human way of exchanging ideas, exchanging thoughts, exchanging, some notion of the extreme, so that it can hopefully be countered by a better mind.
Right.
And that was definitely part of it for me, the perspective of, okay, if he goes to these extremes in this story, are they resolved? Is there a sense of satisfaction, of something final, something that's resolute, or is it something that he just doesn't learn from? Because in reality, we do meet people who don't find those things even about themselves. There's no real introspection. And ultimately, it's part of the human condition to want to exchange that element of the, how can I put this? The more dangerous aspects of, again, the human condition.
Yeah, the psyche. Yeah, absolutely. I love stuff like that. I think it's mutually important to traverse those areas of the mind as it is the positive things. I think they're all tied together. Now, I understand you have a treat for us and the viewers on today's jam sessions. You're going to read a small excerpt from your novel.
Yes. Like I mentioned, there's that instance, and it starts chapter 25. It's where Roy, he's just committed a kidnapping, and he's making sense of it somehow. He's trying to. But if I'll start, he says, he says, I had no clue what I was doing, but I had to get somewhere familiar. I knew that needed to be. I knew where that needed to be, somewhere comfortable, somewhere that was mine. Maybe then I could finally get peace. My anger wasn't going anywhere. I came to grips with the steering wheel over that fact. I stole a quick look at her, hanging limp in my passenger seat. A thin string of blood leaked down her face. The sight of it made me look ahead. I was thankful for the yellow lines on the road, marching under my car through the rain. I checked my mirrors again. There weren't flashing lights from cars or cops. That helped me calm down a bit. When I looked at her again, she didn't move. The blood on her face spilled a little more. The lines on the road fell under my tires with each rough plunge of my heart. The rain poured over my windshield. Each pull from the wiper blades became a rhythmic curtain. Each beat opened to familiar streets, composing the next scene in my impromptu magnum opus. I sat there steering through the curtain of rain, bringing another cigarette to my lips. Each breath of smoke released a special effect that made me the tragic hero. Tragic because I had only my trailer to go back to. A hero because I had her with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's got some great imagery in it. There was almost a movie playing in my head of that scene, the gripping the steering wheel and the yellow lines marching under the tires of the car, the curtain of rain and the rhythmic noise of the windshield. I can see all of that. So great job writing that.
Thank you.
And such a cliffhanger there for, he's headed back to the trailer with her. Is she alive? What's going to happen? He considers himself, both good and bad. Bad because he has nothing. He's only a trailer to go back to, but also the hero because he has her with him. So where is his mind right now? That's pretty intense. Readers are going to want to pick up this book and find out what's going on after that. That was a very well-written scene. Now, with that being said, is there a sequel to this story? Does it continue? Or are there any other projects underway that your fans should know about?
I have fans.
Yeah,
it's so weird to think about. I really hope that this type of narrative, I don't want to go back to it, but I have a sequel in my head. I have an idea to create something better from what I've done before. So my hope is to maybe take one of the characters from this story, not Roy, but one of the characters from this story, and see how they can create, I guess, a better tragedy, maybe.
Sure. Yeah. Resolution, you
Yes.
know, transmutation, something good out of something not so good.
Something satisfying.
Yeah. And it, you know, art seems to be imitating life here, because maybe it's another character, a new aspect of you and the journey that you're on. So that's really, really cool. I'm excited to get my hands on this book. And I'm super happy to have had you on today. And be sure to stop by Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, or Lulu.com and get your copy of Closure by J.L. Avant. Thank you so much, and we hope to have you on for your next project.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Till next time, crazy babies.
Bye.
All right, crazy babies, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Jam Sessions with today's author. Be sure to check out their book and grab a copy. Also, check these great books out. My children's book called Beautiful Boy by Joseph Micah, available on Amazon.com. A great collection of poetry by Alicia Hodge, titled I May Be a Romantic, But I'm Not Hopeless, available on Amazon.com. Another great collection of poetry by Marie Dawn Moldovan, titled 20 Years of Winter, also available on Amazon.com. And last but not least, this is the first book, Vocus Honomarum, in a series, a 7-book series titled Philly Der Bedlam. Again, this is the first book that is out and available, Vocus Honomarum. It's also available on Amazon.com. Be sure to stay tuned. Right after this, I'm going to leave you with a teaser video about that series. The author not only directed and produced this video, but he also created the music that you'll hear in the background. Enjoy.